Today is our second wrap-up episode for Deadhouse Gates, and in this one, we will be spoiling the entire series. So, if you have not read the main 10 books and care about spoilers, I would not listen to this show. So, goodbye, maybe. Hello, and welcome to 10 Very Big Books, a Malazan read-through podcast. My name is Peter Bond, and with me today is a special guest on the show. He's made the PowerPoint guides that we reference on the podcast sometimes and can be found out in the community. His name's Tommy, and welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. I botched the intro, as I usually do, but it is what it is, you know?
It works.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. When did you first read these books, and about how many times have you read each book in the series?
Well, I think I started reading these books about 5 years ago. I starting off reading fantasy, I think, during my sophomore year of college. I read Name of the Wind first, and then Mistborn, and I was like combing through the Goodreads top 100 lists to see what I wanted to read. I read the first 4 Wheel of Time books. I didn't really get into that. But then when I started...
that's so funny. I stopped them after those first 4 too.
Yeah? I think I stopped like 100 pages into the 4th book. I was like, no, this is not for me.
Yeah.
But then when I started Gardens of the Moon, they came in the same Amazon box, and I was hooked in that one. I was really intimidated when I first started.
Oh, did Gardens of the Moon really catch your eye?
Yes, it did.
Oh.
Well, the reputation behind the whole series was really like intimidating. People saying it was like really, really hard.
Yeah.
But I think I'm like one of the only ones on the entire subreddit that actually likes Gardens of the Moon.
It's like there's this rare contingent of people who actually really like that. And listen, I couldn't be happier for them. Honestly, like it's nothing but good vibes. Like, you know, I'm so glad, you know?
Yeah, there was a thread a long time ago that were like someone was trying to have each person rank each book from 1 to 10. Yeah. And I was still reading The Cripple God at the time, but I was like the sole person that had like Gardens of the Moon at number 1 spot.
Yeah, that's very interesting to me.
It's pretty weird.
Even after rereading Gardens of the Moon, it's a book I appreciate more, but I still like it doesn't excite a passion in me like I find Deadhouse Gates does, or Midnight Tides really does. And I just reread Toll the Hounds, and the reread changed that entire book for me. It like blew up my mind. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, how many times have you reread some of the books in the series?
I actually reread only up to Memories of Ice, actually. I read the whole series once, and then I read up to Memories of Ice before I decided, I'm just going to make a companion guide to all these things. So I read the first 3 books 3 times.
So the companion guide came out of the rereading in a way.
Yeah, because I wanted to track everything I'm reading, and I didn't want to have to go back and reread everything twice, because sometimes the wiki, even though it's really great, there's a lot of like bald spots in it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to like something to help easily track everything that happened, and that's how it was born.
Well, I think the community has gotten a lot out of it, and I think a lot of people appreciate it. So
I hope so. I kept writing in that I made these things help indoctrinate other fantasy readers to help them.
I do think they're a bit of a gateway. Yeah.
Yeah, the first 3 books are always the biggest hump until people find their stride into the series.
I do think that's true. I think if you're making it all the way through Memories of Ice, I kind of can't imagine you not seeing it further through, Demian. Like, because if those 3 books aren't for you, I don't know. If you don't like Memories of Ice, I don't know what to tell you. That's basically how I feel. Do you know what I mean?
It's really good. I think it hit harder when, like, even the 3rd time I read it, it was like hit harder than the 2nd time and then the 1st time.
Yeah. So that brings us to Deadhouse Gates, and kind of because we're gonna have the freedom to spoil any part of the series, but you know, we'll be talking primarily about Deadhouse Gates today, and I would love to know. I had a conversation with some people on the subreddit the other day about it, and I'd love to know what you think. Like, what stands out to you, a difference between reading Deadhouse Gates the first time and rereading it? I can think of a ton for me, but I'd love to hear what you think.
To be honest, for me, I think I have like the opposite reaction to most of the subreddit, because it was kind of hard for me the first time to get through Deadhouse Gates.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think I got a lot confused because when I read books, I'm not too much into the combat. And this is kind of like Deadhouse Gates is kind of like the War Gamers
It is the first
book.
time kind of some of the more military aspects of the series come into the fold.
Yeah, I think the things that helped me get through it or that really stood out was pretty much Mappo and Ikariam's friendship between those two, and Iscaropa's comedy between, and all those little hints that like he dripped throughout the book about the world in general.
Yeah, that's to just hone in on the some of the hint stuff, especially with the holds and then some of the First Empire stuff. Like,
yeah,
the first time through, that stuff is just I completely ignored, and I had no context to understand it whatsoever. But obviously, the second time through, you're like, okay, like.
Yeah, there were concepts that I didn't really realize until, because like I thought holds were introduced in book 5 and the
legitimately
nameless ones. Yeah, like and nameless ones were introduced in book 6, but then when you read it, I was like, oh crap, all these things were already introduced here in book 2 in the beginning.
Yeah,
it's like, wow.
it's like in Gardens of the Moon when I was reading again, and you're reading about Ikariam's timekeeper in Darujistan. I was like, oh shit, I didn't know we were talking about Ikariam in Gardens of the Moon. I mean, some of that stuff just slides right under the radar, and that stands for a lot of the hold stuff, and then also some of the Haboric stuff. I'm interested to see House of Chains. I'm sure that'll bring more of it into the clear to me. But the first time through, all of that plot line was entirely incomprehensible to me. You know what I mean? But
it was sort of that was actually not too bad for when I first read it. There was a lot of like mysticism and hooks you into like there's some mystery behind things, and you don't need to really understand it completely. It's just really interesting to see where it goes.
And I think
to me it was.
And that's I think there is mysticism's a word for it, and I am okay with some of the. I feel torn because sometimes there's a fuzziness to some of the logistics of magic, or there's this unknown element to it. But then when I feel like I'm being asked to know about it, or like I don't know that much about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's like I think there was another conversation that popped up asking if Malazan was a hard or soft magic system, and I think soft magic system is the word to describe it, is how they described it too, because it's very loose with the rules. Like Brandon Sanderson would be hard magic. There's hard rules and set and how things work, like with Mistborn and Stormlight.
Which is a totally different pace, and I think, not to kind of derail us into a conversation about the magic, but maybe we should, but I think for me, I'm not one for the minutia of it, so it doesn't bother me at all. And I also think a lot of the times, the magic of these books is really being used in a thematic and kind of emotional way, and like the specific plot, like I always think about the aerosol thing, or whatever, however you say it, the aerosol from the later books. Like, is there any groundwork for that? Not really. Do I care? Not really. I mean, because to me, it's more evoking things, and it's evoking these emotions, and whether we're playing by some rules people want to think about, I don't know. I don't care about that. That's my, I don't know. I feel like he's using the magic in a metaphorical way more often than like as some sort of elaborate rule system, Yeah,
I don't mind it at all either if I don't understand how magic works, or even need to know that there is a concrete system of the way magic works in the series. Because Erickson did say before he does intend to keep the magic system a mystery, because that's how it hooks you in. And I think it's the same kind of argument when you're saying how you might not understand how all the technology works in like sci-fi series, like far in the future things might not exist yet, but you don't know how it works, but it just works in a way.
Yeah. And I think that it retains some of the wonder to it when you're kind of talking about otherworldly things,
Yeah, I don't know even how like technology works. I don't even know how circuits or like coding works at all, but I'm okay. I know that it does work. Someone outside does work. Yeah, I know how to work it.
Twitter works, and I don't need to know how to code. Anyway, we kind of got in the weeds there. But yeah, it's very interesting you bring up the military aspect of the book, because to just pick out the Chain of Dogs for a bit, obviously it's I feel like it is the centerpiece of this book. It's interesting the second time going through how much, when I reflected on the book before, I kind of just thought about this as the Chain of Dogs book, and then other storylines occurred,
Yeah.
But Kalam's storyline is very robust, and it's kind of a traditional kind of adventure story. Like, he has all these friends, and he's on a pirate ship, and then, like, he's in the desert. There's a kind of I don't know, there's an adventurous element to it. And I don't know, it's a bigger story than I looked back upon. Did you think of it just as the Chain of Dogs, or it sounded like you were really catching on to some of the other storylines?
I think I was latching on to more of Fiddler's group and trying to find more lore, and thought that Chain of Dogs was just happening in the background.
That's interesting.
And then on the reread, it was like, wow, these things have weight.
Yeah.
Because in the future books too, like when they reference back to Coltane, it's like, whenever, even just like mere mentions of Coltane has weight to it, once you know what happens at the end of Deadhouse Gates.
Yeah, and
you feel emotion tied to him. Yeah.
And it's interesting because whilst the characters carry on, and like, obviously Mappa and Hikarim are a major through line in the series, like Coltane and the legacy of the Chain of Dogs and the Wiccans and blah, blah, blah. That is kind of the biggest legacy that kind of comes away from Deadhouse Gates. I guess Tavor and Fellison's thing. But I feel like more, I don't know, that's just such a major through line, especially if you talk about Grub and Nutty Nutty. You get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's so much variety to it. I think like the first book shows that it's like really a weird, strange sword and sorcery kind of world in Genebacchus. And then we get introduced to the Seven Cities campaign. And this feels relatively way more low magic than Guardians of the Moon. It showed like a different part of the world in the Malazan series on the other side of the planet.
It really does. So I think for me, one of my favorite parts of this book is the setting. And I think Seven Cities is a much more tangible place than Genebacchus,
Exactly,
for me.
Yeah. Because there's mostly about human conflict in Seven Cities. Like, it's kind of like taking the book out of like the Middle Eastern Wars.
Yeah.
And how that goes. Because most of the characters, like sometimes they'll face like Talana Mas and the shamanistic magic bringing about ghosts from the Seven Cities continent, but it was mostly humans.
Yeah. I think what's so great about the ghost magic, to pick up on that thread, is Seven Cities, part of the texture of that continent to me is the hidden civilizations like lost beneath the sands. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think
throughout the whole series of the book.
Exactly. And it's so, I don't know, it's so tied into the series, especially as a whole. And I think evoking past grief, especially with I just reread the end of the book, obviously, and especially the grieving Jagged that Diker meets past the River Vathar, and I don't know, there's a kind of eternal sorrow to the land, or just a kind of, I don't know, a cycle in a way.
Oh yeah, that was the Jagged ghost that was haunting Corporal List, right?
Yeah,
that guy. Yeah, even Jaggeds have more depth to them than you'd usually think from the first book.
Yeah, Jagged are very interesting. We've yet to record the final episode, and I don't know how Josh and India feel about the end of the Chain of Dogs yet, and it's killing me. I got like 4 days. I'm really dying to record this episode already. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I can't wait to hear that too, because I've been listening to you guys' podcast past couple of days too. It's really interesting how you guys are reacting to several different things.
Yeah, well, it puts me in it sometimes, and it's kind of nice. People tweet at me who obviously have read the books, who like will notice when I'm like sidestepping. Like someone was they were pressing with me about whether Coltane was ascendant or not, and I kind of just ignored the question. You know what I mean? Like there's just times
when he punched.
He punches Gessler. Yeah,
that part I don't think he did. I think the biggest part to take away from that was Gessler's when he went through the
with his skin.
Salon. His skin was tempered by the fire, and they were all bronze skin. I think it was more about showing that Coltane, just being human mortal, he still is strong enough to make a near ascendant bleed. Just showing how badass Coltane is, rather than showing, oh, he's going to be ascending.
I agree. It has to
That's
show.
what I take away.
But to me, I think, and it goes to, in my mind, I conceive of ascendancy not as really of a yes or a no thing, but kind of almost like a dimmer. Do you know what I mean? It's not like a switch going on and off. It's like kind of a thing that grows over time. So, I mean, Coltane certainly has a lot of followers and belief behind him,
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's the type of stuff that, like, those getting into that minutia is not for me. Anywho's, so you mentioned that one of your first times through, you particularly caught on to Mappo and Akarium, and that caught my ear because for me, the first time through, I was so attached to the Chain of Dogs, and it was like the main storyline I cared about, and I didn't really understand Mappo and Akarium's story, and I didn't really get why I was learning about it. You know what I mean? But after finishing the series as a whole, obviously, I don't know, they're central characters. No one's a main character, but they're very important.
Yeah.
And I really found a lot more to grab onto, and I was much more invested in their storyline this time through. So what do you think stood out to you about the characters that first time reading the book, or on subsequent rereads, where I think obviously your context of those characters changes?
I think I just really latched onto them because of how much Mappo loved his friend. It was like a very loving relationship between the two that you don't really see much in other books. Like, people are always like suspicious of each other, or thinking there's someone else's alternative motive, or always arguing with each other. But these two are always showing like super wholesome love. And that was like a really refreshing thing to see, especially in a book as dark as the Malazan series.
Yeah, it's there is the complicated, like there is a more complex element to it that complexifies their love. I don't need to recount the book, but
yeah.
I do know what you mean, that it is like a crisis of love that Mappo has, and like how to deal with the truth of Akarium and also his love for his friend. And I think that is, I think I really understood that journey more this time because I wasn't so lost about why we were following these people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're like the first people we meet too when we first did the book. One of the first people we meet, and then
I think after the prologue, I do think they start. We meet Ned first on Seven Cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also have like this reputation from all the other characters they meet, like other Soul Taken, like Mesrim and Rolandaris, I think.
I think I think Rolandaris is. Also, it was so funny since I really love Return of the Crimson Guard, so it's very funny to see Rolandris back in this one.
I need to read that one. I haven't read any Ice books yet.
Oh, really? I read...
Yeah, I was planning on doing this huge reread and including those books.
On my first read of the series, I weaved in Knight of Knives, Return of the Crimson Guard, and Stonewielder. And Stonewielder was the only one I regretted reading. I mean, it wasn't bad. I mean, I didn't enjoy it that much, but the other two I thought added a ton to my read of the initial series. So I think in my opinion, I was really attached to Lysine and the Empire, and I was kind of surprised and thrown off by a way how they kind of sink into the background and become irrelevant.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Because the series itself is called the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and for the rest of the series, there's not much of the Malazan Empire in it.
It'll be very interesting, I guess, in like 2 years when the podcast can talk about the end of the series. But, because in my initial conception of the series, it was very Imperial focused and Imperial politics focused, but it becomes clear that the story's much bigger than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more like, you just happen to have some characters from the Malazan Empire and then go do some great things. But it's not about the Empire itself. Exactly. I don't know what the capital city looks like.
Yeah, well, it's because we don't spend that much time in Unta, right?
Probably like a couple, even half a paragraph just in Deadhouse Gates. And
yeah, we spend some time in Deadhouse Gates and Bone. We show up every now and then, but
yeah. It's never like a main stage.
Exactly. It's not like Darugistan or Letharis.
Lether.
Yeah. I do think Seven Cities is my favorite of the three major settings.
I think I'm a fan of Jin Bacchus just because of the memory device. It just so much expanded so much upon
I'm honestly so excited to revisit Memories of Ice. I haven't read that book in 4 years, and I think it's just, I don't know. I adored the book the first time. Yeah.
Because, when I first reread the Memories of Ice, we're getting kind of off track, but we got to Coral, and I thought this could have been the end of the book right here. But then it's literally the 49% mark.
Exactly.
I can't believe there's another entire half of the book to go.
Oh, do you mean Capistan?
Capistan, yeah. Coral's
yeah.
Yeah. And it just blew my mind how, I'm holding the physical book and half of it is still going.
I 100% know what you mean, and I feel that way about the Battle of Yigatan and Bone Hunters too.
Yeah.
How it's like the book is so thrilling and climactic and explosive, and you're like, damn, and we're barely scratched the surface of this book. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially since Memories of Ice, I feel like has like, I don't know. I generally feel like Memories of Ice is about as that book's really good. About as perfect. I don't know.
Yeah, he could have ended the series there. And same with Deadhouse Gates. There are a lot, like by the end of Deadhouse Gates and stuff, you still feel like it would have been an okay point to like stop the series, but it just keeps going on and on.
Yeah. It's tough because I think, like, I love Midnight Tides, maybe my favorite of the series. And I know we're really off topic from just talking about Deadhouse Gates, but
I really liked it in Midnight Tides too when I first read it.
yeah. But I guess what I think's interesting about books 2 and 3 is, like, I don't know how someone could not like those books. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love Toll the Hounds, but if someone says that's not their cup of tea, I basically understand it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can understand how this book is not for everyone. But, I mean, Memories of Ice, I don't know what else you're looking for here. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's...
Yeah, I think people are just overwhelmed by all the information out thrown at them.
Yeah.
And which is kind of why I created like companion guides to all the books too.
Yeah.
When you do first read it, it's hard to siphon out, okay, this is important and this is just trivial information that just adds flavor to the book. It's really hard distinction when you first read it.
I agree. And there is a lot of detail, and it can be hard to decipher.
Yeah, like there's a lot of things that he really emphasizes on that could only appear on just that chapter, or even a character that you think is important but never shows up again.
Yeah, and I think even that too is something that you do need to get adjusted to in the series. How it's just like, well, we just hard cut to the baker down the street, and this is the, you know, and it's like there's a reason, and a lot of the times it is a thematic thing, or we're just kind of having a fun in a way. But
yeah, I think it explains like the scope of the series is like it's really huge, and sometimes there's things you never find out. Like there's a lot of unnamed characters too, like the insane mage that went after Culp.
Oh yeah,
and that took him into the Mason Warren.
And I was actually reading it again this time. I was like losing my mind. I was like, wait, is this a character I should know? It feels insane that I don't know this character, but
exactly,
you know, just chilling out there, just some mage, you know.
Yeah, sometimes there's just random forces on the world that just hinder you.
Let's hone back in on Deadhouse Gates, because we got lost in the sauce a bit. So how did you feel about Fellison their first time, and did it change the second time you read the book?
Oh, I thought she was a bitch the whole time.
Oh my god!
Because I did understand how she needed to use sex as a way to get what she needed, and she used it more as a tool of empowerment to get what she needed from like Benneth and the people in the Skull Cup.
Mm.
And then there's a point where Belden tells her that, oh, none of the things she did actually helped them. It was the favors they did for the Dosi guards that helped them survive. And
I don't know if he's to be believed there, for the record, you know?
Yeah. I think it was just a really interesting thing, because now we'll never know what actually happened, but it's always like a point of contention to discuss about. It's always a question in your mind.
Which is good, right? That's the most interesting way for Erickson to have set up the situation, you know, for it to kind of have that give and take, right?
Yeah, like I've read this book 4 years ago, and I'm still thinking about those things in my head. Like that's the effect of those books.
Yeah, and I think in our interview with him, he said something very interesting. We were talking about Felicity. He said she's a character that demands a judgment from the reader, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to put it, because, you know, most people fall on some side of it all, you know?
Yeah.
You know, some people are in this like, oh, she's very sympathetic, but of course I don't support what she does, you know, thing. But
yeah, like I think she's a bitch, but I still like her a lot.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive thoughts, right? Yeah.
And it was interesting because Erickson did say it was one of his favorite characters to write, and how a lot of the series is very equality between the two genders. Yeah. And you still have things like prostitution and things like that. And it sometimes goes both ways too. I think there's like some male prostitutes that go through the same shit as Felson does.
Yeah, it'll be
just really interesting to go see through their eyes.
Honestly, there was a post the other day on the subreddit about feminism in the books, and there was conversation about sexual assault in the books in the thread, and you know, obviously the books talk about sexual assault and prostitution and these things. And we're going to get into it more and more as the series goes on, because in these first two books, they don't play a major role, right?
Yeah.
But like in Memories of Ice, it starts to come up more, and then, so I think I'm leery about having the conversation, but I'm also excited to have the conversation. I think it's an important one to have, but I don't know, obviously it needs to be done in this right way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's why he wrote it. Like everything he wrote, especially in the scene in book 9, he wrote this thing so people would talk about it and not turn away.
Yeah,
when they see it right in front of them. I have a lot of friends. I think that could relate to Felsen too. Like they're not prostituting or doing those things, but just feel like being in those abusive relationships. How they feel like they could be so attached to someone who's so abusive to them.
And I think that it's a heartbreakingly kind of true dynamic, right? Because like that, it can be an element in abusive relationships. So yeah, I think why I've always grabbed onto her as one of my favorite characters is because many characters in the series, to me, channel some of the same vibes. I mean, like, we're cool warriors of different kinds, and that's fine. Like, lots of people have different story. Like Troll and Ikariam are both cool warriors. They have very different stories. You know what I mean? I'm not here to cast everyone in the same light, but Felsen really does kind of fundamentally, like, there's not many other characters that are that much like her. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think she's always resonated with me that way. Yeah, she's a very fragile character in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there's like some characters that are like super epic and bigger than life, and then there's other characters that, I could see this person as being this person that I know in real life.
Yeah,
or I could know, or someone that I passed by that could be going what she's going through.
Yeah. I don't pass a lot of Coltanes on the street necessarily. So I would love to know how to kind of just, because obviously we're talking about Coltane's death soon, and Diker's death, and all these deaths coming up, right? And I would love to know how you feel about death in the series, and how death is often, I would say, like, undone is a word you could say, but reborn. There's a lot of rebirths or false deaths in these ways. To me, I don't care about it at all. But I was just, it was really occurring to me this time reading the book. I was like, okay, well, Diker's dead here, but, like, we got like one book before he's brought back to life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So does knowing those things change the stakes of something like the Chain of Dogs for you?
I don't think it does. Well, I'll first say that when I first came to those death scenes, those were really hard, and they retroactively made the entire Chain of Dogs sequence super cool in my head once I finished the book for the first time. I was like, whoa, this thing happened. I should have been paying more attention to it. Yeah. But knowing they come back later, even though they don't even really come back later in a sense, like I think at the end of book 2, they already hint at Coltane being reborn. Yeah, they do it. It's like the last beat. Yeah. But I don't think it does take away from my experience at all, because they don't truly come back into the story after they come back. Like, Diker's still just in the bar talking. Yeah. And this is essentially the end of Diker's story, right? Yeah. When they die for real. In either actual dying, or it's the end of their part of the story. I fully agree, and I think like, there is stakes to death, especially some characters' death do, like, permanently stick. Do you know what I mean? But actually, is there a person that permanently died and come back to fully reintegrate into the story? Not. I can't think of one, actually. It's tough because there are a lot of characters who die and then come back in this other way. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, Whiskey Jack, Tattersail. I don't need to list. Keep going, but sorry, now I'm just really caught up in thinking about it. But you know what I mean? And like, I think I think someone like Silver Fox, and I'm excited to really talk about it next book, exemplifies it, where Tattersail dies, but when she comes back, like, she's just a fundamentally different character. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's really interesting. It's very interesting. So that's, I'm really excited to hear, because I think Josh and Nini, I think they'll really start getting to the series once they see familiar characters again. I agree. I understand how things go. I'm very excited to return to characters we've already spoken about. You know what I mean? Because obviously Deadhouse Gates is just such a scene change, and I admire that. I'm also really
I can't wait to talk about every book. I wish we could just sit down and talk about them all right away, but yeah, it's going to be a while before we get to Toll the Hounds. I mean, that's all I mean.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So what do you think keeps or makes a reader really into the Malazan series? Like what kind of reader does it take to like really like the series or get into it?
It's an interesting question. I've been thinking about it. To me, I think obviously there's a certain amount of work that needs to be done to read the books, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not easy reading, But I think for me, the stories resonate. I'll speak about my own experience. I think the reason I felt so drawn to it is not because of the specific story, although that is very pleasurable at times. The plot can be very satisfying. But I feel like for me, there's thematically and the world, it resonates with me on a fundamental emotional level. Do you mean? Like, I feel like he's painting a world that in some way rings true and speaks to how I feel human life occurs, And I think that's what draws me to the series and why I have spent the time with it, because I don't know, it's kind of a spiritual thing in a way. What about you?
I think the biggest thing that draws me to the series is like the world itself. Like the Malazan world is almost the strongest character in the whole series. Like every time I think about it, I keep or like start reading something else, I keep thinking about how the world works and how warrens work, or how it feels so lived in. And there's so much details. Like in Deadhouse Gates itself, you have the chain dogs go through their journey and they're attacked through so many different tribes, like the Sept tribe, the Thansi,
Sure.
Burn Kundral Tears or something like that. And they almost each of them have like their own kind of background. He describes what their different armor is like, what kind of different ascendants there are. I think the Sept tribe had
there's the whole Sept god. Yeah, they have a whole storyline about it.
Yeah, where they had to hunt him down and link him to someone that's like tied up in belts and things. And that was really interesting. Like, I think it's the ambition that keeps me coming back. And whenever I read another series, always in the back of my mind, I think this feels like a story that's like seriously really catered to telling a story, like a beginning, middle, end. Whereas Malazan series, it's like you kind of take it or leave it. This is what happens in the history, and then you just go with it.
I do know what you mean, and I would almost articulate it as an indifference to me at hand, which can be cold in some ways, right? But like the world is not screaming out to explain the story to me. Do you mean? The world is there and the story is also going on. And sometimes Erickson will go out of his way to explain the world and maybe the history of certain things, but the history isn't there for the story to occur, And that is very interesting, and I think it presents, there's a very old, ancient nature to the world, which I've always appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's like how he delivers all the info drops, because people say it's really difficult with the info drops, but I feel like rereading it, I feel like there was a lot. I mean, even reading the first time, I felt like there was a lot of info drops that kind of explain how things work.
It's very funny you say that. I feel, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel the same way. Reading through it the second time, especially like a book like Gardens of the Moon. Reading Gardens of the Moon the second time, I was like, oh, he's explaining everything to me. There's a ton of exposition in this book. And God knows I did not feel that way the first two times I tried to read the book. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it's like almost what you're saying about the holds. It's just when you know what's important, it maybe stands out a little more.
Yeah, I feel like it feels even more organic the way they have info dumps too, because it's always in conversation from one character to the other. It only comes up when the characters need to know. So you only learn as the characters know. Yeah. So I don't feel as bad not being in the dark about how the world works, because even the characters don't know either. Which
is good, because ultimately, like, we're not gods. We're experiencing the world through the characters, so we're limited to their information,
Yeah, it's always like there's always a fun sense of like discovery every time I come back. Like even when I was like reviewing for Deadhouse Gates for this podcast, I was like learning things like how there's an entire temple city for the first shapeshifters that stem from the first empire, trying to obtain ascendancy, but in a different way. And it was just really fun, just like finding small facts sprinkled throughout, and how it like retroactively shapes how you remember the series and what happens in it.
it makes me think about how, like, to the point that you only know what the characters know. It makes me think about, it stands out this time that there's this sequence in like the middle of the book where they're discussing what Iskarl Pust's plan is, and it's like a very meta thing. You know, it's like there's three characters sitting around discussing what could be going on in the book. You know, and it's very interesting to have the dialogue of figuring out the book to be in the book. You know, it's I think it's part of that element, that kind of postmodern element of the series, you know?
Yeah, I always love those parts because I feel like it was like Erickson being witty with themselves. Like, I'm going to read your guys' mind and see how you guys feel about this character through these other characters.
Yeah, it's like he knows we know, you know, and that's the whole the shtick in some way, right?
Yeah, there's always quips here and there about not knowing things and being in the dark. And it's just really funny when it does, because that does happen often.
Speaking of some things that stand out, and then maybe we'll start wrapping up, but near the end of the book, there was some line that stood out to me in fire this time. They were talking about the Azath houses, and they were like, and who built them? Where they ever come from? We'll never know. And then they just kept going on. And I was like, huh. and of course, the first time I read that, I didn't think anything of it. But, you know, obviously... I don't know. Obviously, it's a foreshadowing the second time through, you know.
Yeah. What do you think of the nameless ones?
I think they're very interesting. And I guess there's this way. Well, do you have a big nameless ones opinion?
I think they're sort of like, they're almost like evil to the point it's comical. Like, I think they follow, this is going to be super spoiler, but I think they follow the Azath, and even the Azath don't really want them, and no one really wants them around. Yeah, but they just kind of toot their own horn and inject themselves whatever they can, and to make themselves feel important. And this is really funny.
I do know what you mean, and I think what's funny about them, especially when I think about them as a cult, right? Like, there's a way in this, for this setting, that is like really divorced from a type of typical fantasy for me, you know? But then when I write it down on paper sometimes, or when I'm writing the summaries, I'm like, well, they're talking to the god of war, or they're like talking to a mysterious cult. I'm like, oh, okay, there is like we are still channeling with these fantasy vibes and these fantasy tropes. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But you know, like, I don't know. Like, I know Hood is the god of death, but I don't know. Like, every fantasy setting has a death god, but Hood feels different in some way. Do you know what I mean?
Hood does feel different, because he's kind of like a sarcastic dick.
Yeah, Hood's got his own
You can't
vibe.
help but like a bit. You can't help but like him a bit, too. And it's just his own character.
Yeah, there's...
Like, they just have personified characters that they'd only be like entities in other books.
Yeah.
And so it gives them personalities and things that make them super interesting, and he wants to know more about them and follow them.
There's a very human element to some of the gods too, which is obviously a big part of the series, especially talking about the crippled god, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, we went a little long. We didn't always stay on the Deadhouse Gates topic, but you know, we covered. Hopefully, I'll say this, and then I would love to hear what you think about closing thoughts about Deadhouse Gates. For me, the book. It's tough because I feel like for Gardens of the Moon, my opinion of the book changed so much in that, like, I finally understood the book. I don't know if I love the book, but, like, it at least makes sense to me a lot more, and I understand it, you know? So it's like I was really coming at it for the first reread in this totally different way, where Deadhouse Gates, I already pretty much understood and loved the book, you know? So it was a very different aspect to come at it from rereading. And for me, I don't know if the book changed that, my opinion changed that much. I thought it was a great book. I still think it's a great book. You know, I just appreciate different things about it. You know, it's still amongst one of my favorites in the series. I don't think it's my favorite, but it's easily in the top 4 or 5. You know, I think it's a spectacular book. So it's tough. It feels like there's less of a differential. Do you know what I mean? It feels like I'm having less a dramatic reevaluation because I already liked the book. But it was definitely...
I think that's bound to happen, though.
Yeah, I don't think every one of rereading these things is going to radically change the... I mean, I already think Memories of Ice is like a perfect book, so I don't know what rereading it is going to change my mind about.
I think it just reinforces what you liked about in the first place. There's so much more that you know the basic base story to each book, and then there's so much more things to add to the overall story.
Yeah,
and world itself.
And I just feel like I'm appreciating it more. You know what I mean? Like the things I liked, I like more, and the things that kind of passed me by the first time, I'm kind of paying more attention to. So still love the book, and it's one of my favorites of the series. Any closing Deadhouse Gates thoughts from you, Tommy?
Yeah, it's definitely a book that I wasn't too much a fan of when I first read it, but it became top 5 when I reread it and actually planning out the maps in the companion guides and really understanding how the combat worked and how much more information about the First Empire and how things appeared for the Soul Taker and Divers. There's so much history to be brought up. It's just so much fun to reread these first books again, over and over again.
So it sounds like you really did kind of have a reevaluatory experience.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Like after seeing Coltane's End to the Chan Dogs and the first time, it made me want to reread the book, but not immediately. And now I got to experience it again. And now I can see all the badass things he did.
Yo, and especially like from drop 1, it is so clear the whole chain of dogs is going to end in disaster. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and the first time through, I kept being like, nah, they're going to, or we got it. But like literally every sentence they are like, also everyone's going to die. And everyone's like, no, we're not going to die. You know, it's very clear, you know?
It was such a exhausting thing to read through.
Yeah.
Both spiritually and emotionally.
And I think it's because Erickson does a great job of transferring that experience of exhaustion and of the literal march to the reader.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, that'll probably do us for here on this wrap-up show. Tommy, thanks for coming on, of course.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and for those of you who haven't seen it, Tommy has put together these companion guides with chapter summaries and pictures from each part of the book. We'll include a link in the show notes. We reference them all the time. We've referenced them before. They're great if you're trying to keep track of what's going on. So honestly, I haven't recorded the rest of the episodes yet, so these will be coming out at some time, and I'm looking forward to starting Memories of Ice, I guess. There you go.
I'm super excited. To hear what you guys think.
Oh, I can't wait.
And we guys getting through it again. There's so much to look forward to.
Yeah, and it's such a treat because basically, I mean, I like, you know, like House of Chains I like less than some of the other books, right? But but that's everyone has some ranking, right? But like 3 is great, 5 is great, 6 is great. And it's like, I don't know, it's just there's nothing. Obviously, I like the series. I'm excited to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, anyway, tweet at us. We're at 10 Very Big Books. We're at 10 Very Big Books on Gmail too. Let us know what you think of the show, and we'll hope to hear from you soon. See ya.
Have a good night.
Hello, everyone. Producer AJ here, early in the morning with Peter. What's up, Peter?
I'm here. I've been here before. I'm
Welcome.
almost speaking way too much in this podcast, so I just need to get a little extra Peter in here.
Yeah, there's not enough. What's up, Pete?
Well, I'm here, and you know why, so nice facade,
Yes.
Nice try. Not gonna pull it
Thanks,
past me.
it's-
But what I was gonna prompt you to say is, you know, AJ works on a few other shows, and a few other shows he has have Discord communities that talk about the podcast and related things, and, you know, they're multi-purpose. And AJ had a thought.
Yeah, I think it would be cool for us to have a Discord for this show. There's a lot that I feel like this community could talk about if we had like a direct line to them between us as podcast people and them as the listening community. I think it could be a really interesting thing. We've had some people on Twitter be like, I really love that I'm hearing you guys talk about this, and I think it would be cool if we could interact directly with people. There's been some Reddit posts about the show, and I think that would be cool if those could be conversations that we could all have together.
And I talking to people's cool, of course. I'm all pro it. Talking between the community, especially between different listeners, is fun. However, those conversations have been going on and are going on right now on Twitter. We've been trying to tweet a lot more, talking to a lot of people on there. It's been a good time, and conversations going on Reddit as well. But not everyone's on those sites. Everyone's different places. So before we really made any steps vis-a-vis this Discord, I guess I came into this area this area like it's a physical space.
My space.
I fronted up on AJ so we could have this conversation and just basically ask if anyone, try and gauge interest, trying to read the room.
Yeah, we would love to hear from you guys. If you want to email us, 10verybigbooks@gmail.com, or if you just want to tweet at us, or if you want to make a Reddit post about it, anything. We want to know if this is something that you want before we go ahead with it. So please let us know.
You also could send AJ a letter, and he'll tell you where he lives right now.
Mm-hmm. The North Pole.
So wait, are you gonna cut in your actual address later with editing?
Yeah, definitely. I will absolutely.
All right, just tell you. All right, let's get on with the thank yous. I know you have some normal thanks you to do, but the spoiler cast obviously had Tommy on it, and total chiller, great time, loved having him on the show. I think he's done a lot of great work for the Malazan community. I think those companion guides are over the moon. We use them on the show. We use them to talk about on the show, and I know a lot of people have found them to be great. There's links in the description if you want to find them. And I would encourage anyone who's reading the first 3 books to consider using the companion guides if they want some pictorial references. I mean, I just think they're so well-rounded.
Yeah. So thank you, Tommy. Thanks. All right, Pete. I think I can handle the rest of this on my own. So thanks very much, as always, to Dan Gesrick for making our spectacular logo. You can follow him on Twitter at Dan Gesrick for the hottest bachelor party takes. And of course, the wonderful music in today's episode is by the one and only Amaranthin from their album The New Romantic, which you can find along with their other music on bandcamp.com. Links to their pages will be in the show notes, and 10 Very Big Books will be back next week on February 7th with a very, very special episode.
Willful Child, to space we go!
To space! Thank you very much, Pete, and thank you so much for listening.